Hello and welcome back to week 3 of Jazz, Pop, and Rock at Missouri Valley. For week 3, we are going to the beginning of recorded music in the 1920s and 30s with a bit of a mystery man, Robert Johnson, the king of the Delta blues. Let's speak briefly about the origin of the blues before we get to the man himself. The blues is defined as a personal statement made in musical terms which is valid for all members of a society. The goal of the blues is to provide catharsis and kinship with its audience. A quote from this week's video describing the genre as a whole is, "Their statements describing their own states of mind are generalized by their audience when they recall the same or similar experiences." The songs themselves can differ in mood, theme, approach, and/or style of delivery. There are 3 main forms of blues: the country blues, classic or city blues, and the urban blues. The country blues was probably the first form of blues to exist, and it was able to be sustained without the need of recordings, especially in the South. A vital part of the blues is innuendo and double meaning. This came from slaves and their allies needing to use coded language to not alert on listeners. Innuendo is also strong in the African literary tradition, though the most blatant expressions were reserved for the black community only. Record companies, run by white executives, acted as censors, and prior to the 1920s, no recordings exist at all of the blues folk art tradition. Beginning in the 30s and 40s, recordings were made of chain gangs and field laborers. Renowned musicologist Alan Lomax spearheaded this effort in Texas prison work camps. However, these recordings were made long after the true coded language was present. The standard form for blues music is known as the 12-bar blues. Originally, this was variable between 8 and 16 measures, and blues music is most commonly in 4/4 or 2/4 time. The classic blues phase is what you see now. The instruments typically play background music for the first 2 measures, then the vocals carry the text and the tune, and melody instruments fill in a break for the following 2 measures. The passing off between instruments and voices mimics the call-and-response structure prevalent in African musical traditions. The quintessential blues harmony sound comes from the simultaneous use of major and minor tonalities. The blues is driven almost entirely by the singer, and therefore the music comes from a vocal model, not an instrumental one. It features some specifically sung treatments of notes, such as portamentos, fall-offs, non-standard vibrato, and non-tempered tuning. The notes of the scale that indicate we may be performing a blues-inspired piece are the lowered thirds and sevenths, referred to as the blue notes. The country blues are sometimes referred to as the southern, folk, or delta blues, and are typically performed by a male singer. If there is any accompaniment at all, the performer usually accompanies themselves. Popular country blues themes include spoiled crops, ruined homes, death, and separation. The country blues were perpetuated by an oral tradition, meaning that it did not require being written down or recorded to exist. The focus of the country blues was to reflect the visions and values of the people they are singing for. Huddie Leadbelly Ledbetter, Son House, Blind Lemon Jefferson, and Sleepy John Estes were artists that exemplified the country blues. None were better speakers than the artist we will focus on now, Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson was born in 1911 in Hazelhurst, Mississippi, but grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. Johnson is considered to be the most influential bluesman from the Mississippi Delta. His life is shrouded in mystery, and his musical skills were certainly nothing to write home about in the beginning. He originally played the harmonica, but picked up guitar in 1930. He was tutored by Ike Zimmerman, and mainly performed in the tri-state area surrounding the Delta. He died on August 16, 1938, and was likely poisoned by a jealous husband. His lyrics suggest that he had a premonition about his death. Johnson recorded only 29 songs, all for Vocalion Records in Texas between 1936 and 1937. However, his influence reached much beyond what you would think. The Rolling Stones credit Robert Johnson as one of their largest inspirations, as well as Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Sonny Boy Williamson, Junior Parker, and so many more artists. His sound was characteristic of the Delta blues, named after the Mississippi Delta, considered to be from Vicksburg, Mississippi to Memphis, Tennessee. Johnson served as the link between the country and urban blues. Johnson was said to not be a gifted guitarist at the beginning of his career, but he disappeared from the Delta for around a year and a half and came back exceptionally gifted. The story was that Robert Johnson traveled out to a crossroad in Georgia and sold his soul to the devil in order to play guitar better. The first song that correlated Johnson with the devil was Preachin' Blues. Following this song, the blues were thereafter referred to as the devil's music, despite the song itself featuring little to no religious or preaching themes. Johnson was an incredibly superstitious man and leaned hard into the devil angle. Robert Johnson's guitar style was intense, and he coined the bottleneck slide guitar style of playing. His playing features irregular rhythms, broken patterns, shakes and slides, and a propulsive beat. His music is incredibly difficult to transcribe because of how unique his playstyle was. His songs typically follow an AAB structure, where the first two lines are repeated, and then a new idea is iterated with the third line of text, but again, he varies the number of beats within and between phrases. While his patterns may appear more regular, they are much more asymmetrical when trying to transcribe them. In other words, it sounds very familiar and you can recognize the pattern when listening to it, but when you go to write it down, it is much harder to do so. There are three main themes in his lyrics: the impermanence of human relationships, incessant wandering and not belonging anywhere, and irrational, often demonic, fears. A song that typifies a lot of these themes is Hellhound on My Trail, our second song on the playlist for this week. The song shows the unpredictability of country blues rhythm. It does not adhere to any formal structure, it only serves to deliver the text. The song has an introspective style and character, and has a boogie-woogie accompaniment with pulsing eighth notes on the guitar. The video for this week is Devil at the Crossroads, found on Netflix. As always, listen to the songs on the playlist found under the Content tab in our course. A reminder that you have an assignment due Tuesday and another on Wednesday. You should have already turned in your Quincy Jones essay. And that's it. See you next time.